Welcome to My Fellow Montanans. I'm Dr. Kyle Austin, and I'm hosting the show today. My Fellow Montanans is a statewide weekly broadcast on topics ranging from business to agriculture, from health to politics, and anything in between. Follow on youtube.com at My Fellow Montanans, or listen at 94.7 FM, or the mighty 790 AM, or listen live anywhere in the world at mighty790.com. If you'd like to be a guest, sponsor, or advertise on the show, email me, Kyle, at farm406.com. A little bit about me. I'm a Montana guy. I was born and raised up on the High Line outside Havre and on a farm, and went to the University of Montana School of Pharmacy, where I graduated with my doctorate. And today I own and operate Farm 406 right here in Billings, Montana. Today's sponsor is Farm 406. Farm 406 is locally owned pharmacy right here in Billings, Montana, but we offer free delivery statewide. We're open 7 days a week, so transfer your prescriptions to Farm 406 today and support a local pharmacy. Today's topic is government ridiculousness. Yes, that's right. We're going to hit the hot topics. You might agree with me. You might not agree with me. But guess what? At the end of the day, we get the job done. We're going to start off by a little story about getting involved with government. And I may have never been, well, actually, I never have been elected. I've ran for a few congressional races and didn't win, but I have always been involved in politics. And a story I'd like to share with you is a story back when I was 18 years old, going to the Blue Ponies, the Havre High School Blue Ponies. 2021 was when it was. Anyway, I was 18 years old, senior in high school, and hauling grain for my grandfather in a semi and hauling it into Havre. And between the farm and Havre, there's a scale house. And I'm trucking along, and I pull into the scale house, and as I'm going across the scale, I get the red light. And you truck drivers out there, you know, if you get the red light, it's not going to end well. Anyway, so I get the red light. I pull over, I park, and I go in and say, "Hey, officer, what's the problem here?" And, well, Mr. Austin, you're overweight. And I'm like, well, I shouldn't be overweight. I fill that truck up the same I always do and haven't had a problem since. And he's like, well, you're overweight. I'm going to write you a ticket. And so there I was, 18 years old, had my first ticket, and had to go up to our Justice of the Peace, Judge Shagnon, good old lady. We miss Judge Shagnon. And anyway, I sat down. Judge Shagnon's like, "Mr. Austin, how do you plead?" I'm like, "Well, I plead not guilty." And, Judge Shagnon, she looks at me and she's like, "Well, what do you mean not guilty? You're overweight." And I looked at her and said, "I did not knowingly overweigh that truck." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, Judge, let me tell you this. If I drew a line inside that trailer and I filled it up to that line each and every time, that truck will not weigh the same." I said, "Wheat varies from 50 bushel a pound up to 65 bushel a pound." I said, "In that variance with that volume we're hauling, I could be either severely underweight or severely overweight." I said, "So did I knowingly overweigh that truck?" I said, "No." "So am I guilty?" "No, I'm not guilty." Well, Judge Shagnon, she takes that ticket and she rips it up and throws it in the garbage. She said, "That's the best answer I've ever heard. And, I keep telling you farmers, you need to go to the legislature and change the law." So when I walked out of there, I went home, I jumped on the computer, and I was like, this is a challenge. Let's see if we can change the law. And I'm looking at who's our representative from the area. And at the time, the legislature was in session. And Senator John Tester was our state legislator at that time. And so I emailed John at his yahoo.com email address. And I didn't tell him I was a senior in high school. That was secret. So I just said, "Hey, Mr. Tester, I trucking along the High Line and hauling wheat. And, these DOT guys with MCS, they like to harass those farmers out there. Like, they have nothing better to do. And we need to change the law and get this changed." Well, John Tester, I believe he got in touch with a Jorgensen out of Malta, and together they wrote a bill to change the weight limit allowance from 6% to 10%. A lot of you older farmers out there, you probably remember this because this was a huge win for the farming community, whether you're hauling hay or wheat, because we were all getting tickets left and right. And so this changed it. This bill passed the House and the Senate with 100% vote. And it went to the governor, and the governor signed it. No one objected to raising the overage allowance from 6% to 10%. So anyway, a couple months, I walk into my law class at high school, and the law teacher, she comes out and she's like, I got a great story to tell everybody. It's like I was down in Helena, and I was in a room with John Tester, and John Tester looked at me and said, do you know a Kyle Austin from Havre, Montana? And she's like, well, yeah, he's a student in my class. And that just broke the great story, because what she said was they never realized I was a student in high school. But it comes down to, it doesn't matter how old you are or your ambitions, you have the ability to make an impact in our state that's for the better of everybody. Because our government was ridiculous at one time that wasn't appropriate on their weight allowances, we stepped up as a senior in high school, and I got that changed. So let's move on to another topic here. The St. Mary's siphon. A lot of you folks out there probably heard about it in the news, and don't take it too seriously, but where are we at with that, and what's going on? So the St. Mary's siphon, the pipeline up there, was built in 1915 to provide water to the Milk River. And this water provides water up to Canada, to the farmers up there, ranchers, for irrigation. And then it flows down in the Milk, where it comes back into the United States and enters Fresno Reservoir. And before it's dumped down the Milk that continues along the High Line. But this water, it's not the cleanest water. Yeah, that's why they call it the Milk River. It looks milky. And but all the communities along the High Line use this for their drinking water, their sewer purposes, and irrigation. And anyway, the siphon, if you remember, it broke back in 2024. Okay, so a year ago from now, it broke. And why did it break? Who dropped the ball on doing inspections on this pipeline or upkeep? That's a good question. Nobody's answering that, asking those questions like, hey, who dropped the ball for this to even happen in the first place? I mean, a lot of people in Montana rely on this St. Mary's pipeline. So the project is to replace 6,444 feet of this pipe. And folks, that's only 1.2 miles. Only 1.2 miles. I mean, it's not really that long of a pipeline to fix. And here is the ridiculousness to this. So that 1.2 miles of pipe is costing $78.9 million. $78.9 million, folks, to replace this small section of pipeline. Now, a lot of you farmers and ranchers out there, you're probably like, man, I got a backhoe and an excavator. I could just go dig you a trench for, a few $100,000 and we'll be done with it. But no, $78.9 million. Now, there's a construction company out there that's probably going to be buying a yacht or something with that kind of money, because it shouldn't cost that kind of money to replace 1.2 miles of pipe. The projected completion date of this pipeline is August of 2025. So August of this year, this pipeline is going to be completed. But is that going to be too late? Are we planning ahead for catastrophic failure? I was up at Fresno Reservoir here a couple months ago, flying my airplane over it, and I'm like, man, Fresno is low. It is below the top water line. And, they're required to dump so much water every day down the Milk to keep it going. But should the Highline communities be getting prepared for a water shortage? Because even if they get this pipeline fixed in August and they start moving water, by the time that water actually flows up to Canada and back down through Montana, we're probably not going to see that water until October. So does the Highline need to start drilling wells or trucking water or getting prepared? That's a good question, but nobody is thinking ahead. Now, you heard about John Tester a little bit ago, and one of the big projects of John Tester was the North Central Montana Regional Water Authority, and plumbing in the communities of Rocky Boy and Havre and a bunch of other small communities into this water line that comes off of Tiber. But still today, Havre is not tied into that regional water authority. They still rely on the water from the Milk River. Let's move on to another topic that's going to hit a lot of you farmers and ranchers out there. Last year when I was running for Congress, one of my big platforms was fertilizer. The Canadian government has announced that they're going to keep reducing fertilizer production to get a max of 30% reduction by 2030. Most of the fertilizer here in Montana comes from Canada. And so as they reduce the amount of fertilizer produced in Canada, the amount of fertilizer coming down to the States is going to be impossible to come by. And Montana is not set up for fertilizer production. That's something we've dropped the ball on, folks. So the other problem the farmers and ranchers are having that people aren't really talking about is the 25% tariff that our president put on Canada. 25% increase in cost of fertilizer for this year for our farmers up there on the Highline. And so we got problems here, folks. How are we going to grow the crops that we need that support the family farms and the communities if we don't have fertilizer? When are we going to build our own fertilizer production plant right here in the state of Montana? I mean, North Dakota or Montana would be perfect. I mean, we're burning natural gas off in the Bakken, and instead of burning that off, we could pipe that natural gas over to a fertilizer plant and create jobs and have that stability on our fertilizer. All right, next topic here for our government ridiculousness. All right, so a man was sentenced to 20 years in Butte for spraying 2 bears with bear spray. Turns out those 2 bears were state troopers. So Kobe Zier, the man sentenced, he led troopers in a car chase with criminal possession and intent to distribute fentanyl. And obviously when the cops caught up to him, he got out, he took that bear spray and he sprayed a couple bears. But this individual was sentenced to 20 years in prison with 10 years suspended. A similar story here a lot of people are familiar with is the ex-Rocky football player Garrett Dorr III right here in Billings, Montana. Garrett was only 18 years old, and he's sentenced to 60 years in prison. And he was only driving a car when his passengers shot another Rocky student. And a little bit more to that story, Dorr was knocked out, Garrett Dorr was knocked out in a fight earlier that evening, or that early morning, and him and his buddy were out seeking revenge. But the point here is that, Garrett Dorr was not the shooter. He was just driving the car, but he was still sentenced to 60 years in prison with only 10 years suspended. So that's going to mean he's going to get out at the age of 68 years old when he gets released. Now, let's talk about the government ridiculousness here, because a lot of people out there are probably like, well, these guys are criminals. We need to throw the book at them, and they deserve everything they got. Well, you guys, who's really getting punished here? Is our government out to purposely make criminals, or are they out to make a functional society? And we need to, we the people need to be asking these questions, because I think these judges are kind of on a woke agenda of their own. Yeah, they have to punish people, but do you think 20 or 60 years is a little excessive for some of these crimes? Anymore, I kind of feel like our government will make you a criminal just for leaving your house. And any of those out there that have served any time in jail, I think we would agree that 30 days in jail is a pretty long time. I mean, 30 days out when we're walking the streets and working a job and whatnot, it flies by pretty quick. But when you're just sitting there doing nothing but thinking, 30 days is quite a while. Now, we would all agree that crimes that are committed should come with a penalty and be enforced. I'm not saying we don't need a justice system. But who is really to blame for a society to go in the dumps? Is it the soft parents? Is it the baby boomers? When I was being raised, my dad would always come out with the belt. Kyle, don't make me get the belt. And I tell you what, that got a kid to straighten up pretty quick. And our parents need to be teaching the whole right and wrong thing. And with these soft parents these days, or the baby boomers, or the way society has gone, a lot of these kids don't know right or wrong. They're out committing these soft crimes, and we're putting them in prison for 20 to 60 years. So is really long-term prison really the answer, folks? I mean, that's kind of the way our society has gone, but we really need to have that conversation publicly on what is really a penalty or punishment. And is this long-term prison sentence that they're doing, is it penalizing that criminal, or is it penalizing us working taxpayers more? If you really think about it, we're paying for these individuals to serve life in prison. And I think the last quote was $700 a day per person. And then when these individuals get out, they can't be part of society. You know, they're a felon, they're a criminal, they're at retirement age, that they're going to require a lot of health care. And so they're a pet of society. They're a pet of the taxpayer. And so really us taxpayers are the ones that are getting penalized. Now, here's my answer to this is, when they're a younger individual and, it's a soft crime like these two individuals that we're talking about, what about a military boot camp for criminals? What if we throw them in, prison for a year or two, and when they get out, they go to a military boot camp that we basically put the boot to them? A little food for thought on our justice system there, and see if we do need to make some changes. Let's move on to taxes, because taxes have been on the front line of everybody, and obviously our legislature just ended, and the governor's gloating over these tax relief. Are they really tax relief, or is it just a front? So House Bill 337, folks, House Bill 337 revising income taxes is what this bill was about, and it was signed by the governor. And the governor is gloating that this is the biggest income tax reduction in Montana history, cutting $278 million a year. Okay, so we're cutting $278 million a year from people getting taxed in the state of Montana on their income. But where's the cut in our government spending? We'll get to that later. So our governor claims he cut income tax from 6.9% to 5.9% in 2023. So if we take all right, well, I didn't see much on my income tax reduction, but he's saying he reduced it by a tenth of a percent. And on $100,000 income, that's only $1,000 savings. I didn't notice that. I don't know if any of you individuals noticed that. But according to House Bill 337, he will continue to lower income tax down to 5.65% in 2026, and then down to 5.4% in 2027. Lower tax brackets will be lowered to 4.7% for your taxable income. And then House Bill 337 did something actually I agree with here. It changed the capital gains tax brackets. So before it used to have a very low amount on capital gains, like $30,000, $40,000. But they did raise that up into like the $70,000, $80,000. And those taxable limits are at 4.7% as well. So you're not getting taxed as heavy as you are on your income tax. And House Bill 337. So don't get excited this year. You're not going to get a rebate or anything, or if you're a late filer, it doesn't matter, because House Bill 337 doesn't go into effect until January 1st of 2026. Let's talk about this other one, House Bill 542. And House 542, House Bill 542, generally revising tax laws. Okay, so these tax laws are for property tax, and there will be a property tax rebate up to $400 for primary household owners, single residences, and notices will be mailed out to those who are eligible. But if you feel you qualify, you can always go onto the website and apply. Now, just kind of throw something out there that this bill does have penalties for people who file false and fraudulent claims to get the tax rebate. And so if you get caught, there's criminal prosecution and penalties up to 300% of the rebate, plus a penalty of 12% interest every year until you pay it back. So House Bill 542 is the one that really stirred the pot with the city of Billings. And, really the city of Billings had it coming. They were the ones that created this mess. And the reason that the legislators say, hey, we got to fix property taxes in our state because there's places like Billings, the city of Billings, that's overtaxing people. And what it comes down to is the city of Billings is a charter government. And charter governments, for those of you who don't know, it's a contract between the city government and the taxpayers that voted on the charter government to bypass state laws on how the city is ran. And so the city of Billings is really one of two charter governments in the entire state of Montana. Sunburst, Montana is the other one. And in Billings here, though, they have a fixed mill levy. And so that's what caused all the problem here. And so House Bill 542 overpowers the charter governments on fixed mills. And what happens if fixed mills is basically your property value goes up, so do your taxes. And the city of Billings have been driving up property values only to tax gouge everybody. And so House Bill 542 is a result of Billings, and that's why they've been crying. They've been price gouging you folks, and now they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. It's time for them to cut the fat and fall in line. And so the city of Billings, crying, through this whole thing, found that they were in a no-win situation. So they finally decided to fall in line, and they're going to have to cut with fat. So, now in Billings here, we got to figure out how is the city of Billings going to cut the fat? They got these city administrators making over $200,000 a year salary plus benefits. They got a lot of, I personally would say, let's cut code enforcement. Those code officers, we don't need them. They're out there just like a bunch of mall cops harassing everybody anyway. Who cares if your grass is 4 inches long? Maybe we should bring the cows into town. But one of the big things I want to throw out there here about, the taxes is the homestead reduced tax rate. So those people that have a homestead, you will get a reduced tax rate. That's a great thing about House Bill 542. And something on the sidelines out there is the Montana Homestead Act. A lot of people out, do you know that you need to file a homestead declaration? And you do that by going to your county courthouse and filing it on your primary residence. And this allows you to protect your property up to $409,450 of equity. So if any creditor comes after you, you can protect your family property. Another part of House Bill 542 is the rental property reduced tax rate. Class 3 property, which is agricultural land more than 160 acres, that'll be taxed at 2.05% of its productive capacity value. Now, this is a part of the bill that's going to change a lot of this out there for those that have small family farms or what you call hobby farms. So if you have 20 to 160 acres, this is now considered a non-qualifying ag land. And the taxable value is going to be calculated by multiplying the value of the land by 7 times the taxable percentage rate of ag land. So this is where it's going to offset those tax cuts with tax increases. And then class 4 property, which is your residences, your trailers, your mobile homes, et cetera, commercial property, your taxes are going to be on a progressive scale from 0.76% to 2.2% based on market value. Tax relief recap. So taxes will be reduced for the owner-occupied homes and small businesses. Taxes will be raised on second homes, short-term rentals, large commercial properties. And this will be the first time we have a progressivity tax system within a Class 4 property. So value goes up, your taxes go up at a higher rate. So do we want to blame the realtors out there, folks? Because realtors are always driving that market price up. And it might not be on the property that you own, but your neighbor's property goes up, so that makes your property go up. I personally think realtors, instead of a 6%, they should be a flat fee, and that will prevent that problem. And, what we got to look at is, what is a true market value? Should it be the current rate of what houses are being sold, or should it be at what you purchase that property for? And that's locked in for the time of your, the lifetime until you sell that property. Is it time for tax cuts, budget cuts? I would think so. It's time where we need the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency here in Montana, to start cutting wasteful spending. Folks, we got to take a break. You are listening to My Fellow Montanans with Kyle Austin, and I will be right back. You are back listening to My Fellow Montanans, and I am Dr. Kyle Austin, owner of Farm 406. And today's sponsor is Farm 406. And no, Farm 406 is not a pot shop. I get that a lot. Are you a pot shop? Do you sell weed? No, I don't sell weed, and I don't smoke it. We are a locally owned full-service pharmacy right here in Billings, Montana, where we offer free delivery statewide to anybody and anywhere in our great state. And we are open 7 days a week. And there's no reason for you not to transfer your prescription and support a local pharmacy here in the great state of Montana. Especially a cool name. I grew up on a farm, and that's where, PHARM, farm, and 406 being Montana. So a little history there. All right. So we were talking about taxes on the first half of the show, and, I kind of led you into this balanced budget situation. And so, yes, folks, the governor put us in a bad position. After lawmakers concluded 69th legislative session, Governor Greg Gianforte has to balance the budget. And so if you guys don't know, under Article 8, Section 9 of our state constitution, we cannot have a deficit. We cannot go in the hole. And we have to balance the budget. And so the governor has been out there gloating about tax cuts this year, and he's been gloating about raising teachers' pay, and he's been gloating about spending more money on expanding prisons, and he's been gloating about spending more money on law enforcement. Well, his overspending is caught up to him. The governor is now faced a task to balance the budget, as we will see a $61 million shortfall in 2027. So where's he going to cut $61 million? Where do you want him to cut $61 million? Now, like I mentioned about bringing Doge to Montana, maybe it is time we bring Elon Musk up for a visit and see what Elon wants to cut. Personally, I don't see a need for the Department of Labor. The Montana Department of Labor and Industry, folks, is, it's just a building full of red tape for our businesses right here in the state of Montana. I think we just cut them and save $61+ million A lot of entrepreneurs out there and a lot of dreamers that want to open a business in the state of Montana find, that barrier with the Department of Labor, and they just choose not to open their business, or they open their business and the Department of Labor puts them out of business. And that's not the way it should be. Maybe it's time we put the Department of Labor out of business and cut some of these overstaffed offices. So a new interesting topic, cell phones. And the reason I brought this topic up is because Virginia, the state of Virginia, is under fire because they have a new law that limits social media use for minors under the age of 16 and limits them to 1 hour a day of social media. Now, Virginia already has hand-free laws and they've banned cell phone usage in the state. But to bring this topic to Montana here, Montana has a hands-free law on cell phones, but is it really enforced? I remember when at first the hands-free law came out, we saw cops pulling everybody over writing tickets, but nowadays people are posting these reckless driving pictures as they're driving on Facebook, and I don't see the cops writing those people tickets, but they should. And, should cell phones be banned in public schools in Montana? I personally think so. But I would actually take it a step further. I think we should ban cell phones for all kids under the age of 18. I mean, that digital creative world out there and all the apps, I mean, it's dangerous. And the access that minors have on cell phones these days is a lot different from when I was raised. Back when I was in high school, I had a cell phone at the age of 16. But it was one of those 3-watt bag phones that all you could do was call somebody. And it was good for working out in the country because when I was fencing, if there was an accident or someone had to get a hold of me, I had a cell phone available. But, nowadays they have these smartphones where you have all these dating apps and that's where people are getting in trouble. The content that's on there, these high schoolers are getting away. Well, actually middle schoolers too. I mean, parents are giving kids down to 5 years old a cell phone these days. And, you hear the arguments, well, I want to track my kid. Well, if you want to track your kid, get a dog collar. But with these apps on these phones, these dating apps, there's kids out there that are lying about their age and sending nudies across Snapchat and receiving nudies. And it brings in the question of what else are they doing on these apps? And I personally feel it makes them a lot easier to join gangs and deal drugs and get access to drug and alcohol. And so I kind of feel like it's best just to pull those cell phones from the kids altogether. We're finding as an employer that kids don't know how to use computers even. You bring them on and you ask them to type a letter in Word and they don't even know how to type a letter. I had a kid that didn't even know how to address an envelope and mail a letter. And you kind of find like people that, their kids are spending time on their cell phones all day long. They don't know how to socially interact. They don't know how to carry a conversation, and they don't have a work ethic either. I mean, showing up to work anymore for these kids, it's, they show up to work, but they expect just to be on their phone all day. And you tell them put their phone away. Guess what? They quit. All right. So more government ridiculous here. Let's talk about Signal Peak here. I don't want to beat up on Signal Peak. They're a great company. They provide a lot of jobs in the community. But some of the government ridiculousness that follows some of this stuff, it's just kind of hard not to talk about it. And so Signal Peak has been in the news lately for donating a very large amount of money to help build a new rec center, an ice rink here in Billings, Montana. And for those of you that don't know, Signal Peak is a coal mine that's located north of Billings up by the Roundup area. And but they've been getting a lot of positive attention lately. I mean, they've donated $6 million towards a total project of $16 million to build this rec center. And they just broke ground the other day. And I thought it was interesting that Governor Gianforte, he comes up to join the celebration as a political attempt to take credit for this. By saying that he did it and he's creating all these jobs and he's supporting the community. But, Governor Gianforte, you showed up for the groundbreaking and that's all you did. You can't take credit for that. You shouldn't even have been there. But anyway, this new arena, it's going to be built on the south side of Billings. And for those of you that don't know the south side of Billings, it's the older part of town. It's lower income. There's more crime there. And a lot of people are concerned that it's not the best location. It's a bad location for a brand new rec center. And, my concern is, will people actually use it because where it's located? Could they have picked a better location? Absolutely. If I were to do this, I would have probably put it up by the airport on the rims, just so people from the West End, Central Town, Heights, they can all access very easily by jumping up by the airport. But no, it's down on the south end. And the question is, will it be used? And if it is, what will it be used for? I have concerns that after that shiny penny wears off, it's going to turn into a homeless shelter. It's going to be a place for the homeless to migrate to and get shelter and get a shower and hang out, and maybe get a candy bar from the vending machine. Or will it become a dump zone for kids in place of a daycare? Is the city of Billings prepared to staff this to adequately supervise a bunch of kids? So let's throw a little ridiculousness into this, because I don't know if you guys remember last year, but Signal Peak reached out to the Yellowstone County Commissioners and begged for a tax break. And so Signal Peak received $147 million tax break, folks. And as a business owner, I didn't see any tax break. So why is the county commissioners giving, this big coal mine a huge tax break? But all the small businesses out there and everyone else, it's like, no, you still got to pony up. But when Yellowstone County had a $147 million shortfall, did they roll that over to everybody else and we all had to cough up a little extra this last year? It's a good question. Maybe we need to dig a little bit more on that. And, the other question here is, Signal Peak getting a big old pat on the back for $6 million donation to an arena. But that's after they withheld $147 million and didn't pay their fair share of taxes. Think about that one. A $6 million trade for a $147 million tax cut. I want to jump into a little bit of pharmacy stuff here, because something great happened for the state of Montana. House Bill 740. And through my congressional races the last couple of years, I've, put PBM reform on my platform. And what PBMs are is they're pharmacy benefit managers. And they're corrupt folks. And pharmacy benefit managers, they work with your insurance companies to adjudicate claims with pharmacies out there, and they own their own pharmacies as well, and that's those mail order pharmacies. And they profit millions and billions of dollars each year by raising your premiums and then refusing to pay pharmacies for the services that we provide. And like I said, PBM reform was one of those platforms when I was a congressional candidate, because what I've found is these PBMs are very powerful. They have a lot of money. And people like Troy Downing have been bought and paid for, and they just sit in office and don't take action. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to run for Congress, folks, is I'm not a person that can be bought and paid for. So House Bill 740 was drafted last year and kind of put on the back burners. And at the beginning of the legislative session, I wrote a letter, and it was to the point to the legislators and the governor, and basically said, hey, we need PBM reform now. We don't have time to wait year after year. And Commissioner Brown at the Commissioner of Insurance Office is new to his job, and obviously he's buried hip deep, and he wasn't responding to me either to get stuff done this year. It's always, we'll do it next year. We'll do it next year. Well, I sent the letter out, and, there was a congresswoman from the west side of the state that took House Bill 740 and got it going and got it alive. And it snuck through the House and the Senate and got to the governor's office and got signed last week. And this is a great layer to protect small businesses, especially small independent pharmacies in our state, because those of you that live in rural communities, you know that your pharmacy either closed or is struggling. And it's because these PBMs have closed their doors. We're behind the ball on it, folks. I mean, so this year was a victory for independent pharmacies because this provided a layer of protection for the pharmacies out there from the PBMs. And but it also does a lot of great things for leveling the playing field as well among corporate competitors. You know, for the residents of Montana, it also, this bill provide language, you know, so you can, you don't have to use mail order pharmacies. Mail order pharmacies have to allow you to have the same benefits and the same access to a local pharmacy as they would offer you on their mail order. So, you know, those ones out there that say, well, you're going to pay $10 at your independent pharmacy, but if you move to our mail order pharmacy, we'll give you 90 days and you'll pay zero copay. Well, when this bill goes active October 1st of this fall, folks, you can get 90 days at $0 at your local pharmacy. There's no more dealing with the mail order garbage. That's great. I mean, you can support your local pharmacy. You can go in and talk to your pharmacist and ask questions. You don't have to sit there and press 3, 4, 5, 6 and wait 30 minutes to talk to a human being and then find out they don't speak English. So one of the things that, you know, kind of irritated me as a pharmacy owner is these PBMs that process these claims collect your data and they sell your information, your data to other third parties and make money off of it. But they also use it to steal business. So I'd have a lot of customers call me up and be like, hey, you know, my pharmacy benefit manager called me up and they're telling me I have to switch to their mail order. And how did they even know that they were using my pharmacy? And obviously, consumers out there, they get a choice of pharmacy. You know, they can tell that PBM to go fly a kite. And, you know, but the problem is these PBMs write the rules. And that's why you can't change your plans halfway through the year. They can. These PBMs can change their rules anytime. In fact, I get a notice almost every day that they updated their provider handbook. But if you don't like your policy, you're stuck with it until the end of the year. Unless you stop paying your premium. That's a little trick to it, folks. If you just stop paying your premium, they'll let you out. But you're not getting into another policy until the first of the year, which ain't a bad idea. I mean, I tell a lot of patients out there, self-insure. By the time you pay your $500 to $1,000 a year premium, and let's just say it's $1,000. Okay, you pay $1,000. That's $12,000 a year in premiums. Then if you have a $3,000 deductible, you're at $15,000 before that insurance company will pay $1. So if you're to self-insure and you're a healthy individual and you put $15,000 away, or let's just say anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year away, you know, after 10 years, you'll have $100,000 to $150,000 saved up in a savings account that you could use for medical expenses or a rainy day. So that's how corrupt these insurance companies are, folks. You know, the other trick to these insurance companies is they got it figured out where you get to your deductible. Let's say you got your $3,000 deductible and you hit that in November. And they have to pay out a little bit. And then guess what? The 1st of January comes around and they get to start all over. And you have to start all over on your deductible again. And so really these insurance companies, they got it figured out. And it's a scam. And so if you can self-insure, that's the way I recommend you do. And we're going to have a guest on here in one of the next upcoming couple shows. And we're going to talk about health insurance and we're going to talk about alternatives and save you Montanans some money on your health. And hopefully be healthier at it too and happier. So anyway, House Bill 740, huge win for everybody. You know, it helps create fair competition with everybody out there and protect the small business owners in our great state. But we're not done. I mean, we need to continue to have PBM reform in our state of Montana. We can't give up. And most importantly, we need to have our federal government create federal PBM form. And that way everybody in America is not getting hosed by these pharmacy benefit managers. So I don't know if you guys caught my show a couple weeks ago, but Farm 406 is partnered with Relay for Life. And the American Cancer Society has a fundraising event, Relay for Life. And this is an important walk that they do once a year here in Billings. But we partnered with Relay for Life because being an independent pharmacy local, we support local as well. So we expect people to support local business, but also expect us to donate back. And that's the important thing about independent businesses. It's a win-win-win situation for everybody. And so I'm asking everybody to help us raise $90,000 for Relay for Life. And you can do that for the month of May, June, and July of 2025 here by transferring and filling your prescriptions at Farm 406. And this is at no extra cost to you, folks. I mean, it's not like you go to the store and they're like, hey, do you want to round up $1 so we can donate it on your behalf? No. We're not rounding up anything. You're going to pay the same as you've always paid, and no matter where you go or where you've been. And we're just going to donate the profits in May, June, and July here to Relay for Life. And so it's a win-win for everybody, folks. You don't have to come up with any extra money. I don't have to come up with any extra money. I'm just doing a little extra hard work. And what Relay for Life is, part of the American Cancer Society is, cancer is tough and it impacts almost everybody. I mean, even if you don't have cancer, you know somebody that does, or you know somebody that potentially will, or a friend or a family member. And it really drains the family. And there's more to it than what insurance covers. I mean, there's travel costs, hotel costs, and that's where Relay comes in. But, Relay for Life even has support groups, folks. And so, even if your family member has cancer and you need support help, you can reach out to them as well. Caregivers, everyone always thinks, oh, you got your nurses and your CNAs and your pharmacists and your doctors. And, if we deal with that kind of stuff on an everyday basis and we learn how to cope with it. But from a healthcare standpoint, we do take it personally, and we need help too once in a while. And Relay can provide that counseling for caregivers out there that are taking care of people who are dying of cancer. So the Relay for Life, mark your calendars. They're going to do their walk downtown Billings here on September 27th. And that's their yearly event. But the big thing, like I said, is we need you to fill your prescriptions at Farm 406 to help raise $90,000. And reach out to your friends, family, and say, transfer your prescriptions. I mean, even if you're up in, a small town on the High Line, Malta, Montana, let's say, well, Farm 406 mails prescriptions for free. So there's no reason why you can't transfer down, and we just drop it in the mail. Well, folks, that concludes the show today on My Fellow Montanans. I am Dr. Kyle Austin, owner of Farm 406. And remember that this podcast is available on youtube.com at My Fellow Montanans. And join us next week, same time, same place, 7 p.m. on the mighty790.com, where you can stream us worldwide if you don't want to go to YouTube at myfellowmontanans.com. I appreciate you joining the show, and I'll catch you next week.